Ray J walked into the UFC Apex in Las Vegas as someone with a point to prove. He walked out on a stool, dazed, with a knot swelling on his forehead the size of a golf ball, and a mouth full of excuses that made the whole night 10 times more chaotic than the knockout itself. On the night of May 23, 2026, Adin Ross's Brand Risk Promotions 14 delivered one of the most talked-about celebrity combat sports moments of the year. Not because the fight was technically impressive, not because it was a competitive display of MMA skills, but because everything around it, the build-up, the actual fight, and especially what happened after the final bell, turned into a full-blown controversy that nobody saw coming. Well, almost nobody. Brand Risk 14 was already a stacked card by influencer boxing standards. Johnny Manziel had opened the night by dismantling social media personality Bob Menery in the first round. 6x9 performed at halftime. Chris Brown and Ruby Rose were ringside, with Ben Didon hosting. The energy in the UFC Apex was undeniable, but the fight everyone had been building toward all week was Ray J versus Supa Hot Fire, real name Dwayne Stevenson, in what was billed as the co-main event of the evening. The buildup had been genuine theater. At the pre-fight press conference, security had to physically separate the two men multiple times after tensions boiled over. Supa Hot Fire showed up wearing a shirt with a direct reference to Kim Kardashian, a clear, deliberate dig at Ray J's most infamous chapter. Ray J didn't handle it quietly. He grew visibly emotional, actually tearing up in front of the crowd, telling everyone he was ready to die in the ring for his children. It was the kind of dramatic pre-fight moment that gets clipped and shared endlessly, and that's exactly what happened. Round 1 arrives, and the cage door closes. Ray J comes out aggressive, pressing forward, throwing punches. He looked like a man who had actually trained. The problem? Supa Hot Fire didn't throw a single meaningful punch back. He circled the cage, moved laterally, avoided exchanges entirely, and essentially refused to engage, asking questions out loud. The crowd was confused, Ray J was landing shots, and Supa Hot Fire was just dancing. It was so passive that it immediately struck viewers watching, live as strange, almost theatrical in its deliberateness. Then the second round begins. 26 seconds in, Supa Hot Fire walks out looking like an entirely different fighter. He turns up the pressure, backs Ray J against the ropes, unloads a combination, and lands a clean, decisive right-hand square to the face. Ray J drops to the canvas. He falls into the ropes first, then hits the mat. Ray J eventually gets back to his feet, but he's so visibly dazed that he has to sit down on a stool just to stabilize himself. The knot forming on his forehead told the full story before the replays even rolled. Official result: Supa Hot Fire wins via TKO in round 2. Records now read: Supa Hot Fire 1-0, Ray J 0-1. Here's where the night went from entertaining to genuinely explosive. Rather than accepting the loss with the kind of quiet dignity that an MMA debut knockout usually demands, Ray J walked over to Supa Hot Fire in what could generously be described as a confrontational post-fight exchange. His demeanor wasn't that of a man who had just taken a hard shot to the head and needed rest. He looked angry, frustrated in a very specific way. Not the frustration of losing a fight.
I was playing, I told you.
Yeah, I think he's doing this for like
but the frustration of someone who felt a deal had been broken. And then he said it. On camera, in what became one of the most clipped moments of the entire event, Ray J looked directly at Supa Hot Fire and said, "We had a plan. My NGGA. Do you know how much money we lost?" That sentence, right there, detonated the entire narrative of the evening. Ray J wasn't just upset about a knockout. He was explicitly suggesting that he and Supa Hot Fire had a prearranged agreement, a plan, for how the fight was supposed to go. And according to Ray J, Supa Hot Fire went off script. The decision to actually knock him out wasn't part of the deal, and as a result, both of them apparently lost money. He stopped short of calling it rigged in the most explicit terms, but the implication was crystal clear. Supa Hot Fire.
Do not die.
You know he fighting super hot fire, man.
No.
Standing right there through all of it, awkwardly smiled and said absolutely nothing. Not a single word, which, depending on how you read it, is either an admission or the most calculated silence in brand risk history. What makes this even more layered is that Ray J's complaint wasn't that he was cheated in the traditional sports sense. He was essentially admitting, in real time, that he expected the fight to be at least partially scripted, and that Supa Hot Fire violated their shared understanding by landing that knockout for real. It's a distinction with enormous consequences. Because if the fight had a plan, then Ray J wasn't wronged by a dirty opponent. He was wronged by a partner who broke from a joint arrangement. That's a completely different kind of problem. Footage of the knockout and Ray J's post-fight comments spread across X, Instagram, and TikTok within minutes of the event ending. The knockout clip alone surpassed 30,000 views shortly after being posted, and that number kept climbing through the following day. The reactions ranged from outright mockery to genuine concern, with very little in between. The knot on Ray J's forehead became its own meme ecosystem. Comments like, "Put a titty on his forehead," circulated widely, and the image of him sitting on the stool, visibly rocked, became one of the defining viral images of the weekend. The humor was brutal, as it always is in these spaces. But underneath the jokes, a more serious conversation was running in parallel. People who had watched the fight live were already questioning what they'd seen before Ray J said anything. The first round was so passive. Supa Hot Fire so clearly unwilling to engage that multiple viewers flagged it as suspicious in real time. When Ray J's post-fight comments dropped, those early suspicions hardened into full-on conspiracy territory. Clips of him saying "we had a plan" were paired with slow-motion replays of Supa Hot Fire's deliberate non-activity in round 1, and the comparison was damning.
Others brought up context that made the whole situation feel stranger. Ray J had publicly stated months earlier, following hospitalization for pneumonia and heart issues, that he didn't have much time left to live, at one point saying, "2027 is definitely a wrap for me." That's what they say. That he was then medically cleared to compete in an MMA fight, stepped into that cage, and came out of it suggesting the whole thing was partially prearranged is a lot to process all at once. The conversation online stopped being just about the fight and started being about Ray J's judgment more broadly. The fight's structure raises questions that don't have clean answers yet. If there was truly a plan between the fighters, the most obvious question is what that plan was. Did Ray J expect Supa Hot Fire to carry him to a decision? Did they agree on a specific outcome? Or was the arrangement something less defined, more like an unspoken understanding that the fight would be made for entertainment rather than a genuine competitive contest? The fact that Ray J framed it in terms of money lost suggests there were financial bets or arrangements tied to a specific outcome, which brings the whole event into a much more troubling light. Supa Hot Fire's performance in round 1 doesn't make sense as a tactical decision for a fighter who genuinely wanted to win. He had already boxed competitively before this event. He wasn't an amateur stumbling through a first camp. Choosing to do absolutely nothing in an entire opening round, against a debuting, health-compromised opponent who was walking forward and throwing punches, doesn't read as a strategic game plan. It reads as someone who had been told the first round would look a certain way. Then, for whatever reason, he decided in round 2 to just end it. Whether that reason was competitive instinct overriding the arrangement, a change of heart, an external signal, or something else entirely, nobody outside the situation knows. But the behavioral whiplash between rounds 1 and 2 is genuinely difficult to explain any other way. There's also the matter of Ray J's own conduct. By complaining so loudly and explicitly after the fight, he didn't just implicate Supa Hot Fire, he implicated himself. If the fight was prearranged in any meaningful way, Ray J was a participant in that arrangement. His outrage, genuine as it may be, is the outrage of someone who got burned by a plan he helped design. That's not a great look, and no amount of emotional post-fight candor changes the underlying math of the situation. The fallout moved fast. On his live stream the following day, Adin Ross addressed the fight directly and with a level of seriousness that surprised some viewers who expected him to brush past it. Ross didn't dismiss Ray J's comments. He acknowledged the strangeness of Supa Hot Fire's first-round passivity and stated plainly that his team would investigate. Ray J obviously what he said after the fight. Supa Hot not throwing AF *****ing punch like in the first round, we need to look into that, Ross said. We're taking that shit very seriously. It looked weird bro. He also confirmed that both fighters could potentially face bans from future brand risk events while the investigation plays out. For an organization that has betting companies like RainBet associated with its events, the integrity of the outcomes isn't just a reputational issue, it's a legal and regulatory one. Nevada's Athletic Commission oversees combat sports held at the UFC Apex. If there's credible evidence that the fight was prearranged and bets were placed on a fixed result, that's a conversation that goes well beyond Adin Ross' live stream. Ross was careful to draw a distinction. He didn't claim the actual fight was rigged, only that Supa Hot Fire's first-round performance needed scrutiny. But the way Ray J framed his post-fight comments made it very hard to separate those two things. You can't credibly argue a fight was on the level when one of the participants is standing there saying there was a plan that went sideways. For Supa Hot Fire, the outcome is paradoxical. He went into this event as a comedy figure, the internet meme who built a brand on battle rap parody and the "I'm not a rapper" punchline. He's coming out of it as the guy who genuinely starched an R&B singer at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas and then said nothing when accused of breaking a pre-fight agreement. That silence is doing a lot of work. It's either the coolest move in the whole story or the most incriminating one, depending on what the investigation uncovers. For Ray J, the math is much harder. He stepped into the cage months after telling the world he might be dying. He got knocked out in front of a live audience and a streaming crowd. He then accidentally confessed, on camera, that the fight might have been staged. That sequence of events is extraordinarily difficult to recover from narratively. His post-fight anger may have been real, and his grievance may have been legitimate, but by vocalizing it the way